Ali ono što je bitno, taj prvi susret s crkvom, da te boje budu radosne, da se ne plašimo tih lijepih, jarkih boja i da ne idemo na to da je tamo nešto crno, strašno, mračno, nego da je svjetlo i lijepo. Manche bezeichnen unsere Kirche als Diaspora-Kirche. Sie ist aber auch als heimische Kirche zu betrachten, da viele unserer Gläubigen in Deutschland seit langem leben. Mehrere Generationen von ihnen sind sogar hier geboren.
Welcome to the conference, New Young People Migration and the Demographic Challenge in the Western Balkans, respectively, to our panel, the role of the diaspora and regional relation, the second panel of the day, and if I'm not mistaken, the last regular panel of this conference. A panel which I would like to give a subtitle called Influence Beyond Remittances, ? Because this is an issue that I would like to ask some questions about. Let me briefly introduce you the five panelists. For the sake of simplicity, I will do it in alphabetical order, and I'll do it really brief because if you're interested in more extensive CVs, you can find them on the conference website. We are connected to Adem Gashi, who works at the West Balkan Youth Project, which is attached to the Regional Cooperation Council in Sarajevo. Then we will be talking to Nikola Kandić, lawyer and project assistant, also based in Sarajevo, if I'm not mistaken. He is with the Youth Council of the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And then we have Lumnije Jusufi, who joins us from Berlin, I suppose. All right. She is a linguist and researcher at the Department of Slavic and Hungarian Studies at the Humboldt-University in Berlin, but she has also worked with various universities in Southeast Europe, or with the Technical University in Dortmund and the Ludwig Maximilians University in Munich. From Skopje, we are joined by Silvana Mojsovska, who is professor at the for International Economics at the Kirill and Methodius University in Skopje. And then there is Nermin Oruč with us, who is founder and director of the Center for Development, Evaluation and Social Science Research in Sarajevo. So we have a 3/5 majority for Sarajevo in our panel, and coordinator of the Western Balkans Migration Network. Let me just briefly tell you what we are planning. For just in case, I prepared 3 rounds of questions for everybody, which of course I might adapt according to how our debate goes. But actually, I'm only planning right now to ask the first set of questions, and then we would like to immediately open the floor to the other people who might have joined and hopefully joined us via Zoom, so that you can ask your questions. And only if no questions or not enough questions would be coming up, I would go with the second and third round of my own questions. A technical remark for the questions, use either the Q&A function or this raise hand function. Mrs. Esch has promised to help me a little bit with the moderation. I have been, like all of us, in a lot of Zoom conferences since March this year, either as a panelist or as a listener, but not yet as a moderator. So I hope I'm not going to mix it up, as obviously I managed already in the very first minute of this panel, but I hope I'm not going to make any other technical mistakes here. And okay, I went introducing you in the order of the alphabet. Now I would like to go the other way around and start with Nermin Oruč, founder and director, as I said, of this Center for Development, Evaluation and Social Science and Research in Sarajevo. And you provided this conference with a very comprehensive and interesting paper, which of course I've read in preparation for this moderation. And there is one issue that I found particularly, I mean, there are many issues which I found interesting, but one which I really would like to ask you about, to share more details with us. You state in your paper that, I'm quoting, there is evidence of a difference in political views in the results of elections when votes in the diaspora are compared to the votes of the local populations in the country. You also urge, if I understood you correctly, a simplification of voting process and attracting diaspora members to get involved in elections. And you propose reserving seats in the respective parliaments for diaspora members, which, as you write, could be an effective way to increase the interest in participation of diaspora voters at elections in their home countries or countries of origin. Now, the question I have is, when you look at the voting patterns of diasporas, very often there are more, of course there are exceptions, but often there are more nationalists than the voting patterns of people in the respective countries. I wanted to give three examples. At the Turkish presidential elections in 2018, Erdogan ended up with about 52-point-something%, whereas the diaspora in Germany voted 67%, I think. Well, let me say, I have the 65% for him. So had it been up only to the diaspora, and the same patterns you could observe in Austria, Belgium, and other countries in Western Europe. So had it been only up to the diaspora, the undemocratic regime of Tayyip Erdogan would have been even stronger than without them. Second example, Mrs. Mojsovska, please correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, in Macedonia, it was Prime Minister Gruevski and his nationalist Vimro party who introduced 3 reserved seats for the diaspora because they figured that they would be winning them for their line of policy, which I think in 2011 also happened. And the last example, I remember a discussion with Srđan Bogosavljević, one of the smartest political analysts, I think at least in Serbia, who told me some years ago about the radical nationalistic Serbian diaspora in Australia running full-fledged newspaper ads for the reoccupation of Kosovo and so on, to which he said, well, listen, why don't they send their kids to war in Kosovo and let us mind our own business here in Serbia? I just do not want to have them say in our politics. I gave these examples because I wanted to prepare a question, which is, do you really believe, what makes you believe that involving the diaspora, reserving seats for them in parliaments where it hasn't happened yet anyhow, would really be, would really have a beneficial influence on the domestic political landscape?
Well, this argument about large involvement of diaspora, can you hear me?
Yes, I like off and on. Go on, and then I will. Please go on talking.
Yeah. Okay. So the argument presented with regards to the larger political involvement of diaspora is part of the larger framework which was presented in the paper that political involvement will also contribute to, say, improved cooperation regionally and improved cooperation between diaspora and their home societies, and thus contribute to the development of these countries. Specifically, the arguments about, say, expected role of diaspora in, say, democratization or, changes of political regimes even is based on evidence such as a paper by Tena Prelec about voting behavior of Serbian diaspora in presidential election 2017, and also on the, say, following the patterns of emigration of people from these countries, mainly, and this can be, say, contrasting behavior or contrast to Turkish diaspora. In a vast majority, I would say, of diaspora currently are what we call outsiders. If you refer to, let's say, labor market behavior or access, these people are usually the ones that are not well integrated into these political establishments, are not part of the, say, regime and control over state resources, and thus, as such, they are usually, as we can see from the evidence, the ones that are best and brightest, but not really having an opportunity to actually, succeed within their country. So they are somehow driven outside the country, very often supported by these political establishments that see this as an opportunity to, say, get rid of opposition and also expect some remittances inflows in the future. And I was referring to some examples where we have, bilateral employment programs with Germany in a situation where we are already lacking such a labor force. This, say, can be an evidence of, say, the interest or motivation of the current political regimes. When we talk about, say, nationalistic behavior or feelings of diaspora community, I would still say that it may be because nationalists are louder, are more present in these, communications or media, or but if we look at a composition of diaspora, which is changing, I think we still have some prejudices towards diaspora based on, say, their involvement in 1990s. But then at a later stage, evidence I mentioned, some, from Serbia, some evidence mentioned in the elections in Albania and Kosovo suggests that we actually have different kind of, behavior and influence or political views of this diaspora community, and also the recommendation for involving diaspora through parliamentary seats is something that is already being mentioned in Kosovo, for example. So there are some initiatives, not yet materialized, but already initiatives for that. And I think this is the reason why it didn't happen yet, compared to, for example, Croatian parliament having seats for, Croats from Bosnia, expecting or being quite aware of, which party will gain majority of votes from these voters. I think the reluctance of local governments to include these people, in parliaments or more strongly in the political lives, I don't know, even through, easier voting procedures such as electronic voting, is because there is expectation, or there is a feeling of threat by this diaspora community, because they know there is increasing number due to recent immigration flows of people who would vote against current political regimes.
Okay, thank you very much. And don't get me wrong, I didn't want to say that your assessment was wrong. I just had the impression when I went through it that it might have a lot of facets. And of course, you're right. In the Serbian case, which you mentioned in your study, that's like a counterexample. You have another counterexample, I would dare to say, in Romania, where the diaspora was very important in the protests against Liviu Dragnea. But then again, I think there are other examples, so that deserves maybe a separate conference for separate studies, or maybe they are, and I'm just not aware of them. Thank you very much for the first round, but maybe we can get back to this in the second. And now, because I'm going backwards in the alphabet, I have a question for Silvana Mojsovska, whom I cannot see right now in my, in my computer here, but I guess she's there. Yes, I see you now. Hello.
Hello.
You also contributed a comprehensive study for this conference, which of course I also read, and also a lot of interesting inspiration in this paper. In the paper, among other things, you advocate increasing the mobility of professionals in the Western Balkans through mutual recognition of professional qualifications, I'm quoting again, and by removing obstacles to the mobility of students, researchers, and academics. This approach, you write, could promote intra-regional migration. Now, I think while there's no person in his or her right mind who would be against promoting intra-regional migration and reducing obstacles, such as recognizing diplomas. We all know this is an never-ending issue between Kosovo and Serbia, for example, but also in other countries. I was just wondering, would this really make other indications that this could actually make a substantial difference in the sense that, like, why would people from one country where people are leaving from in masses move to another country where people are leaving? I mean, for academics, I believe especially would be great if there would be more interaction and movement, but then again, academics and journalists, for example, are irrelevant in terms of numbers on GDP influence. Would this really make a difference? I realize, of course, that this was only one of the ideas you proposed, but what kind of difference do you think could it make?
It could make a difference that it will encourage so-called circular migration, because it's easier for people to come back from the countries in the region, and that became very visible now with the situation of COVID. So for anyone that was close in the countries nearby, it was easy to come here. The idea here is actually related to CEFTA, as there is a process of recognition of professional qualifications within CEFTA. And but so far nothing has been done, actually, because the processes are really complicated. And anyone who went through a process of recognition of a diploma, let's say in North Macedonia from Serbia, it's a very complicated procedure. And then it's a paradox, but it's easier to go and work in Germany, for example, than to get a job in the region. And if we are talking about staying in the region, then we have to think about that. But here, although I put it as an idea, I must say there is also one threat that we must be aware of. This professional recognition of qualification, mutual recognition of professional qualification has been advocated within CEFTA and as part of regional cooperation. And it is very much encouraged by the European Union. But on the other hand, no one has opened the question how to relate that to the process of EU integration. Because many people were eager to go to Croatia because it was closer to the European Union. And when it entered the European Union, many questions remained open, like, okay, so now what with these people that are from these Balkan countries? So this could help people to remain in the region, the professionals, but also these questions need to be open. We could not see the regional cooperation a part of the EU integration. And we must admit EU integration is far more appealing for the people than the regional integration.
May I add one question here? I mean, you mentioned it's incredible complicated to get to move from Northern Macedonia to Serbia and get one's papers recognized. Can you maybe, if you know more about it, tell a little bit, why is it so complicated? Are the governments aware of it, and why are they not doing anything about it if they are aware of it?
I think they're aware of it because they are the ones who stipulate the procedures, how to make the nostrification of a certain diploma. And Balkan countries are not, they don't have a preferential treatment or something. So what is applicable for, let's say, a diploma gained in Austria or any other country is applicable also for the Balkans, no matter that the systems were quite similar before. So the procedures themselves are quite complicated. And that doesn't mean that people could not get jobs, because for many jobs, especially in the private sector, you don't need a diploma, or you also don't need a nostrificated diploma to work in the international organizations. But if you want to get unemployment at the universities, not as a visiting professor, but as a full-time staff, then you have to go through all these procedures. And that's why very often people tend to avoid these procedures and they just go abroad, where in some countries it is easier to do this.
Sorry, Jen, just one last question for this first round. Are there any statistics, to your knowledge, that tell us something about the existing movement, which in spite of all obstacles exists from people moving from one Western Balkan country to the other for jobs? No.
Unfortunately, that's there are some very limited statistics, but the question of statistics is one of the most painful questions with regards to the migration. In our countries, in the Western Balkans, unfortunately, we don't know how many people have left the countries. And it is a paradox to rely on the statistics of the receiving countries. And there are many reasons for that. And one I have mentioned in my paper that should also be done, because if you don't have statistics, especially these countries also have issues with their censuses. In my country, we didn't have census for 20 years. How we could know who has left the country, who has remained in the country, and what skills these people have? The ones that are left the country, that contributes to melting of the human capital of the country. And if we don't know who has remained, we could not have any proper economic planning. So statistics is definitely a major issue. And if we should prioritize what to do first, I think these countries definitely should tackle the statistics.
Thank you very much. This is very interesting. I refrain now from another question that's on the tip of my tongue on North Macedonia and censuses and statistics, but we might come back to that in the second round, and we can ask the same question, I think, about Bosnia, even though they had a census a while ago, but about the political implications. Thank you very much. And the next on my list is Lumnije Jusufi. Now, again, for whatever reason, I cannot see her because probably not. Aha, now I can. Who also has contributed a study or a research paper to this conference, even having interviews with more than 120 people for this paper. You have done a lot of research in German and English on the relations between people who emigrated and those who stayed. Actually, I learned from your paper a lot of the stereotypes on both sides, among them that the word diasporasi is a swear word in Bosnia, which I hadn't heard before. And you also write about the well-educated descendants of migrants who might be thinking of coming back, but they have they often struggle with exclusion and with networks to which they do not belong and which do not accept them, especially, as I understand, and I've read that in other research papers as well, in the field of academics. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit about the situation of those potential returnees and the obstacles they find in the countries they return to or they are contemplating returning to?
The first step, it's this what Silvana said, to recognize the diploma. It's really very, very long time and very difficult process. The second one, I would say, are the advertisements for new jobs, because often I can observe that there are formal criteria like to have the residence in the country at the time of the application, or to have the citizenship of the country on the workplace.
So it's a catch-22 situation in a way.
Yes, I think you have no chance to apply and not to get the job. And I see it really every day, because I'm albanologist, and I work with Kosovo, Macedonia, North Macedonia, and Albania a lot. And you can see also in the contact with the institution, not really with the colleagues. It's very difficult for me as a worker from university, okay, not really a professor, with my students, because we have students for Slavic studies, for Albanian studies, and to send somebody with a name, with a Slavic name or with Albanian name there is very, very difficult for summer schools, for internship, and also on. Only with Erasmus, it's gone, because Erasmus, we had it now in Berlin, but before also in Munich. All the other, my students, they excluded my students because of the name, really. And they say it's not for Albanians. It's not for Albanians. For example, in Pristina, a very famous international seminar, it's only for foreign people. And when I ask, where can you see this Albanian? What is Albanian for you? The Albanian name. It doesn't matter if this student is born and grew up in Germany and can't speak the Albanian language, but it studied now and have to learn it good, have to learn it well, and say, no, they are Albanians. It doesn't matter the passport, it doesn't matter the language knowledges, and so on. It's really very, very difficult for me as a German institution to work with the institution on Western Balkans, and to have this changing with students from here, from Germany to there, from there to here, it's better.
Do you also know something? I mean, now you describe the academic sphere, which obviously is the sphere you know best because you belong to it. Do you also know something about, let's say, the so-called real economy? Are there also networks of people that maybe work together to exclude potential returnees? Are there any studies, or do you know anything about it?
I just finished a study with a colleague of mine for Max Planck Institute, and we work a lot with returnees, really returnees in Kosovo. And it's, for them, it's difficult too. They said all of them, we have some informants, and all of them were returnees from Germany not after the war. They were former refugees here and went back in 2008 after the independence of Kosovo, and says that the locals before called them Shaca. It's this trade war for emigrants, not for emigrants. And they say they called us Shaca. And all of them studied now German language and work with the German language and wanted to come to Germany again, because they are integrated there, their work there, and say it's very, very difficult in the everyday life to have a normal communication with people. Maybe they hear an accent from them because they grew up in Germany and want, as a teenager there, and didn't learn really Albanian language because there were anything for these children in Kosovo integrated program, because they said it's a repatriation in the country, are Albanians, and we don't need some special classes or language courses and so on. And I think, yes, it's difficult to say what are locals and what are emigrated people, because I think in Kosovo mostly, or maybe all of them, has migration experience in the past because of the war, and it's a very, very conflictful relationship. In Kosovo is worse than in other Western Balkan states. I can hear you, Mr. Martin.
Because I got the message that the operator muted me, because probably we had church bells in the background. This was not meant to be now, but that's how it happens sometimes. All right, thank you very much. And then I am going on to Nikola Kandić. Sorry, I have to. Yes, now I can see you. Hi. You work with young people a lot, and you belong to them by your generation also. Could you maybe, not now on an expert level, but on a general level, explain a little bit? We read a lot about in those studies mentioned before, or generally in studies on migration, about how the reasons to leave your country have changed. I mean, in the case of Bosnia, obviously they have changed because it's not the war anymore driving people out, but also how people do not, like how there's a difference between the gastarbeiteri in the 60s and 70s who left for work, and now people who are not necessarily only leaving because of a career and prospects and with a better job, but because they believe they would not like to live in a society which, as they perceive it, does not judge them by their merits, but by their connections or the right party membership or whatever. Can you maybe, if this is the case, I mean, if not, be free to tell me that it's not, but if it is, could you elaborate a little bit about what young people, what is the trigger for young people to contemplate leaving, and have there been any shifts in the latest years maybe?
Oh, thank you on the question. Do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you perfectly.
Oh, great. Well, as you said, I work with the young people every day, and we have a lot of different stories and a lot of different answers. What are the main reasons for young people to leave their countries from the Western Balkan 6? At the first place, that is a question of unemployment, and the reason for their leaving countries are finding job. But that's not the only reason. In the last few years, there are other reasons, like people in Western Balkan 6 countries don't believe in the system, in political system in their countries. They believe that the level of corruption is high. Not only the level of corruption in the governments, but also in educational system, in the healthcare system. And we can say that today young people in the Western Balkans don't feel safe. Not that they don't feel safe that someone will kill them, but they don't feel safe at any aspect of life. If you are going to university, you are not sure that you will get enough knowledge, or if you are going to hospitals, you are not sure that you will get the right healthcare or something like that. But what is important for us, like youngsters for Western Balkan 6 countries, is to talk about diaspora, because we see diaspora like a bridge between our countries and diaspora in other countries abroad. We really believe that we can use the knowledge of diaspora as a tool in some processes. Probably the main issue for the Western Balkan 6 countries is the issue of economy, and we really believe that diaspora need to be included in this region in the way like diaspora direct investments. And we really believe that our governments need to make a better economic environment for diaspora, because why someone who is from Bosnia and Herzegovina and now lives in Germany and have enough money to invest in Bosnia and Herzegovina will invest in Bosnia and Herzegovina if economic environment is not good. That's probably one of the ways how we need to improve situation in the Western Balkans 6 and to become better economies. Also, what is important for us, yes, is to have some strategic plan or some really good survey about structure of diaspora. Today we are speaking about diaspora like about rich people in Germany and Austria, but maybe that's not the case in every case. What is happening with our diaspora who is not rich in Germany or in Sweden? And today is a problem also that we don't know the numbers of the people who live abroad and who are the part of our diaspora, and also the question about from Professor Mojsovska about migration between Western Balkan countries. For example, I'm born in Montenegro in 1992, and I live more than 25 years in Bosnia and Herzegovina. If you ask anyone from the Western Balkans, is Nikola diaspora? He's not diaspora because he lives in a country which is similar to the homeland, the language is similar, situation is similar. But imagine Nikola, who is born in 1992 in Montenegro, and he lives only 10 years in Germany. Is that Nikola diaspora? That Nikola is probably diaspora for the Western Balkan countries. And that's something which we need to research, because we don't have enough information about the structure of our diaspora. That is important for us, because at the moment we have the information about them, then we can create policies at the state level, because this process is really important for us if we want to include diaspora policies in our development policies in the future.
Thank you very much. And because I see we do not have so many questions yet, I will allow myself to make an exception from my own rule and ask a second question, if I may, that popped up to me while I was listening to you. I'm constantly, as a journalist, looking for positive stories from the Balkans, and actually, I think if you look for them, you can find them. And one of them, one thing that really impressed me in Bosnia, and since you lived there for so many years, you will have heard of it, is the Nias Hastor Foundation and the stuff they do. Nias Hastor, for those who do not know, is a real big name. Well, now we have to see whether he still will be, because he, in the automotive industry, he has a conglomerate of companies who are working with Volkswagen, Mercedes, BMW, whatever. He is a real hidden champion on world level. Unfortunately, he is in a certain trouble now because he is in a fight with Volkswagen. We cannot go into all these details, but I went to Gorazde and had a look at their factories, and I was really, really impressed. To me, being a dilettante here, of course, this would look really like state-of-the-art production. And then I had a look at the Hastor Foundation, which basically was doing what is lacking so often in the region. They were educating the people they need for their companies. They were giving scholarships to families in need so that they do not have to leave in order to finish their educational career. They have this dual approach of education and training on the job. And I don't know, I was really impressed, and I was wondering, wow, why don't we have more of these initiatives? Would you agree that this is like a way to go? And for example, I mean, I don't want to reklamiram Hastor here, but that this kind of approach is helpful?
Yeah, of course, that kind of approach is really helpful. And that's not only a great example in the Western Balkan countries. There's a lot of different councils of our diaspora groups in other parts of countries which are helping our students with scholarships and something like that. But what is important, that are individual cases. We need to have reforms in our countries, because that reforms need to be from the top to the bottom. if Mr. Hartzor or someone like him wanna invest in Bosnia and Herzegovina, he needs to be sure that that money will be in Bosnia and Herzegovina and will be spent on the right way. That's the reason why we need reforms, because in the societies like Bosnia and Herzegovina and all other Western Balkan countries, as I said, one of the biggest problems is corruption, because we don't believe in our educational system, in our political system, in our judicial system. And that's the reason why we need these reforms before we ask diaspora to invest money. After that, we can think about that we need transfer of the knowledge from the university professors and academics from the Western world, or maybe we also can ask diaspora to invest money and to invest that money in universities, in charities, in companies, in any other way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I think we'll get back to this if I have the time, to the question of what has to be done to make the countries of the Western Balkans more attractive to potential investors from the diaspora. But now I want to close the first round with the question to Adem Gashi. Hello. I hope you can hear me. No?
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Martens.
Yes, hi.
They're connected.
Sorry for having kept you waiting so much, but it was a very interesting first round. Well, something I think we should ask it. I don't think it's in the papers yet because they obviously were researched and written quite a while ago, but that we should include, and it was partly mentioned, of course, already in yesterday's panels, for example, the one that Tim Judah moderated. What influence has COVID-19 on the entire question of migration, circular migration, and so on? We heard yesterday in the panel, I forgot who said it, that the remittances in Bulgaria went down by, I think, by figures of the National Bank in Sofia by 65% or something. So obviously, I mean, this, for all of us, we wouldn't be sitting here staring at computers if it wasn't for COVID-19. We would be seeing each other, hopefully in Berlin or in another nice place. This has had a huge impact on everyday life. How has it impacted, to your knowledge, migration plans of young people? What do you know and hear about that?
So yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, when being like the last one in the conference, to add something valuable in the sense of
you can also decide to ignore my question and answer another question which you find more important, but maybe you can just with one or two sentences go on.
So it's but nevertheless, I mean, it's the part I mean of the region in this aspect. It is the part of the brain gain has not been actually addressed yet in the sense of be it specifically in the economies or the region as a whole. In the sense of the economies, it's still, I mean, the migration issue has been swept under the rug, I believe, in this part, and the discussions have not been opened and thoroughly addressed the key push and pull factors that are affecting all the economies in the region. And maybe I'm going to jump quite quick to the conclusion, but it is the part that we see and the experience that we have. It is, if we don't deal with this issue at the regional level, I mean, also with diaspora and with different issues that concern, if we don't deal with at the regional level, then next year we don't have to convene another conference on youth and diaspora and the region at this level or any other level, because the problems are going to be the same. We're going to be discussing all about the same issues. And luckily, I mean, we had the opportunity, as I said, it's a blessing sometimes to be like on the end, as you may hear, like from innovative and bright minds about different activities, different actions, different researches that they have done. And it was mentioned also what diaspora is serving to the region. On one side, we were talking about very qualified diaspora, and as well as talking about the issue of lack of the data about the diaspora. and at the same time, what do they bring to the region when they come, or how they are received in the region. And of course, if the region is not going to provide this platform, this area that is going to go beyond the old problems that it has, economies between each other, as well as lack of cooperation between each other in different sense, be it on mobility of the citizens, be it on the educational level of exchange programs, or be it on the cooperation of the youth, let's say in this regard, then when the diaspora comes, as you were saying, like maybe it's going to be limited, the contribution to the part of the remittances. But is it going to help the region? Does the region have the capacity to absorb the contribution of diaspora that it entails, or whether it has the opportunity to conduct the exchanges with the other part of the world through the diaspora or within the region to utilize all the resources that it has? This all depends about the regional cooperation that it enhances. For instance, like only on the project that we have with the Western Balkan Youth Lab project, it seeks to establish cooperation between the youth councils in the region with youth councils in European Union member states. And so in this regard, just thinking about this process and making it to very tangible results and tangible cooperation level, in the sense of more standardized and structured cooperation with the EU and with other countries and with diaspora, this could be some of the platforms that actually could be utilized better in the sense of having the contribution of diaspora as well as of engaging the circular migration. Because if the brain gain it's addressed and investment opportunities are provided in the region, then of course diaspora and all this circular migration will be much smoother and much productive in different senses, rather than as one of the first issues was raised here, like do they bring more nationalism to the Balkans? If we are offering nationalism, of course they're going to bring nationalism. If we are offering cooperation and innovation space and opportunity space, then they're gonna be contributing to this part in that sense.
Okay, maybe they'll bring both nationalism and money. That goes together very often. But anyhow, we can go on this in a second round maybe. Thank you very much for this first round. Now, I would like to ask Mrs. Esch, I'm just afraid if I push a button, I'll kick myself out of this panel again. I think there are 3 questions. Mrs. Esch, could you read them out? I think that's what we agreed.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
There is no question, though. There is just a comment that I believe refers to the beginning of the panel. It says both the Serbian and Albanian diaspora vote far more progressively than their counterparts in the Balkans. This is just a fact that can be seen by the share of the anti-Vucic and anti-PDK votes among the diaspora. Calling them nationalistic is very anachronistic and a deep mischaracterization of their political culture. So well, maybe this is a topic
yes, whoever said that probably didn't listen so carefully, because I didn't claim that this is always the case. I just claimed it's a blurred picture. I think one could add to Albania and Serbia, which we have mentioned also, I mean to Kosovo and Serbia, also Romania, where, as I said before, Livno Dragnja, who is a so-called socialist, but of course not in substance, was ousted partly or mainly due also to due to a strong involvement of the diaspora. But then again, we have counterexamples as from Turkey, which is of course not Western Balkan, but belongs to the region, and Macedonia. So I guess the picture is definitely not clear-cut in any case. Okay, so if there's only one comment and no question, I would go with a second round of questions then, if that's okay. Now again, and I would then again just keep the old order and try to go back to Nermin Oruč, who is still with us. And actually, it's perfect, because what I wrote down for the second round exactly fits to how the first round ended. And this is about methods of attracting diaspora investments and so on. You write in your, I hope I'm not mixing up the studies which I read now, but you're writing, correct me if that was not you, that the diaspora should be the main target of government efforts to attract foreign investments. Diaspora investors are not facing obstacles. On a different line, you write, diaspora investors are not facing obstacles for starting their business in the Western Balkan countries any differently from other investors. But if that is the case, why then a special focus on diaspora instead of focusing first and foremost on reducing red tape, corruption, bureaucracy, nepotism, whatever? Wouldn't that be the first? And then the second is only to develop special programs for diaspora?
Yeah, I think these are not actually conflicting statements to try to explain. This is based on 2 projects I was involved in. One was implemented by Swiss Development Agency and the other one implemented by USAID, where matching grants were provided to diaspora investors. And surveys of their needs, of their preferences was conducted, and basically in order to address the main obstacles for investments, they found out that basically when we talk about say the first set of obstacles, it's about business climate, business environment, and this is something that, say, if we are going to attract diaspora investments, we are actually tackling the issues for any other investors. So I mean that they are facing the same obstacles in terms of the administrative procedures and such things. What I was the other thing that I mentioned that there are strong reasons for focusing, say, investment promotion activities. I think all countries have something like foreign investment promotion agency, and although we internally sometimes as a joke call them foreign investment prevention agencies. The issue is that when you talk to these, or when you see their activities, you don't see a recognition that there is a strong diaspora. There are diaspora investors, and the diaspora investors have this patriotic motive and have patriotic rent. Are willing to take even say larger risk or lower returns to their investments because they want to contribute to their local communities. Examples you mentioned from Gorazde, I'm also quite familiar, so I have a lot of family members there, is that compared to 2010, when UNDP conducted a regional assessment study in Bosnia, ranking municipalities by their development, Gorazde was at the bottom of the list. The same study in 2015, Gorazde was at the top of the list. And this is like development index with indicators on unemployment, GDP, wages, and such things.
Do you think Hastor made a difference?
Exactly, Hastor and Bekto, the other investor from Austria. Yeah. So basically, 2 investors have made a considerable change in the well-being of a local community. But both investors are actually people of born in Gorazde. So they are not investors, let's say, looking for investment opportunities anywhere in Bosnia. They are actually investing in their local community. The other thing I would like to raise here is that the issue of sustainability. So what would happen if these people were to leave? And this is exactly what they were threatening local government. They said, whatever success they made was not thanks to these local governments, but despite their efforts, to make environment even worse for them. And the owners actually participated in protests, well-known ones in 2014 in Bosnia. So there is obviously a lot of room to actually improve cooperation between diaspora investors and governments, including local level governments, which according to the evidence we have is not really cooperation, but rather, let's say, disconnected efforts and maybe, you know, in certain cases, let's say, you know, even against.
If I may add, because I really find the example of Gorazd really, really important because it shows it can work. When I was there, I interviewed the local mayor, whose name I forgot, who actually, I had the impression from both sides, meaning the investors and the local mayor, that on local level, there was not a big problem. It was more on entity level and on higher level. On local level, of course, the mayor was happy that all of a sudden, you know, he had this God-given, so to speak, development, and he had jobs to provide not only for Gorazd. The people came from Serbia to work there.
Yes.
They were picking them up with buses. Actually, there was the problem, which is also mentioned in some of the papers, that they had a lack of working force. But then on entity level or state level, in the question of the highway and so on, that was really a problem. And then really it was interesting how one of the biggest taxpayers can actually not be heard by on entity level or state level with his projects. I would like to interrupt this second round for a second because I saw one comment which I would just like to add, and we have also one question. The comment is by Tim Judah, who said, don't forget that also Maria Sandu in Moldova was highly over the average supported by the diaspora. So we have another example here about, let's say, progressive influence of the diaspora. The more I hear about it, the pros and cons or the different examples, I think this could be a topic for a separate conference, the political voting patterns and political influence of the diasporas. And we have a question I see by Anila Shuka, who had just been gone for a while. Can the moderators put her up somehow? No. We have two questions. Okay, could you, I don't know how this is being done. Could you please let them speak? Let them ask their questions.
You have to unmute yourselves.
We have to?
Anila, you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Hello to everybody. Thank you very much. So we are speaking here now for the people who should come back to Western Balkan, and this is the first step to be done by the government in the region to create the condition. This is okay, but I am a mother of a 7 years old German Albanian daughter who speaks Albanian with German accent, like her shots, maybe, I don't know. And she, and the question is if would make sense for the German government, so the European government and the European Union to support the diaspora children as well and the youth, the younger generation, to know better their origin countries with summer camps, exchanges, and maybe with courses of the origin languages in their countries where they live. Because I remember in the time of Yugoslavia, this was well organized, and maybe this is something to be done like a contract. Thank you.
Okay, so this was more a comment, I understand, than a question. Or would anyone like to react on what has been said? Then please make yourself known. No, okay, but we do have a, yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, it is a very big conflict for a long time in Germany. This old rule for language courses for migrants in Germany, because this program was for children of Gastarbeiter, guest worker, to prepare them for going back. It was the program or the idea of Gastarbeiter. And after the wars in 1990 in Yugoslavia, the German institution or the German Bundesländer, the part, Republic, or what is in English, decide to stop this program because they say we don't want to prepare these children for going back, because it's also the curricula of these classes. It was really not really good for integrated the children here in Germany. And if Germany pay these courses, it have to be in other concept of language courses. And the state of origins, mostly of them on the Western Balkans, didn't want to offer a new concept for languages, not as a mother tongue, but as a foreign language. There was a very big initiative in Kosovo and Albania together for the Albanian language. And the concept was the same like in Yugoslavia. They wanted to give it a broad, the same concept of language and national concept, and I don't know what, and history from the country, from Albania and Kosovo, but not a new one, with this idea for bilingual children, Albanian as a foreign language. It's not the same like in Yugoslavia time.
Thank you very much. And we have another question from Nelia Aivazi. You must please unmute yourself, otherwise we cannot hear you. Are you still there? No, I guess not. So then we will return to our round of questions. To the second round. All right, I would like to now ask Silvana Mojsovska again about the instruments. You mentioned SEFTA, the instruments to make it more, I mean, to enhance or to make investments from diaspora, from people from the diaspora more attractive. Could you, what instruments are there, and what instruments should be there, or what is not working properly about the existing instruments? Because obviously there's a lot to be improved. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, what I was referring to is actually the existing instrument within the frame of so-called regional economic area, which is called RERA, the Regional Investment Agenda. And I was commenting on that because it was developed within the frame of strengthening the regional cooperation, but actually, I would say without doing a proper sector diagnostic or what actually countries like and what is the potential they have. Because this process has been done under the umbrella of the European Union within the scope of so-called regional cooperation. And that is the part the countries have signed in the Trieste Forum, and as a pledge, a political pledge that they will devote to that. On the other hand, we have the Western Balkan countries seeing themselves as rivals in attracting foreign direct investments. They all depend on the foreign direct investment. So here we don't have, according to me, clear connection between both processes. So one of the proposals that I make in the paper is actually to put this RERA into a realistic concept. How to do that? By actually making a proper study for the whole region, how, in what fields we can attract foreign investors and to build so-called regional supply chains. These chains do not exist. I would argue on this idea that we could not force foreign companies where to invest, and we could not force the diaspora to come and invest in certain sectors, but we could do that into making a proper strategy, what actually could work, what is the potential in terms of skills and qualifications in the region. What works perfectly in the past few years, I think in all the countries of the Western Balkans, are investment in IT. IT industries are blooming, but that is a service-oriented industry. Now we are talking about production. And there is a reason why things are developing like this, because in all of investment, the countries were actually doing their best. They were not focusing themselves on the region, they were focusing themselves on the Balkans, on the European Union market. So when you have a focus on the European Union market and you have free access, then it's very difficult actually to look yourself within the region. And that has to be changed. There are initiatives like this one that I've mentioned, the RERA and CEFTA and so on, but they need to get a policy content in order to make them work.
Thank you very much. I lost you. I don't know whether it was only my connection for like half a minute or something, but I got most of it. I'm tempted to ask about the textile industry and ship a question, but I will go. I mean, maybe we can do that in another round if we. Well, actually, we have to do it at another occasion, I'm afraid. Mrs. Jusufi, one question that popped up when I read your study. What do you think, having been an immigrant and contemplating returning to one's home to be politically active, from your research, would that be more a liability or an asset in the view of the respective communities to which people might return?
Political sphere? I'm sorry, I couldn't understand your question.
Okay, I mean, you're an immigrant from, I don't know, Macedonia, Albanian from Tetovo. You have been abroad 10 years somewhere, and you acquired some knowledge, some skills, whatever, and you decide to return in order to be politically active. And you describe in your research how there are stereotypes on both sides, how, you know, the people who stayed perceive those who left as arrogant, and how those who left perceive those who stayed as backward and whatever. So if you return, can you, I mean, maybe it's not possible to generalize, but I wanted to ask anyhow, if someone returns and wants to be politically active in the community that he, or maybe even his parents or her parents once came from, would the fact that he or she has been abroad make him more or less attractive as a political actor to the people he tries to appeal to?
I think no, because the critic for the immigrants are always, if we want to discuss about the political situation there, everybody says, and not really colleagues, but also in the family, they say, oh, you don't know how is it here. You have to live here, I don't know, a couple of years, and to pay here tax, and to look for a job, and to send your children in this very crazy school, and to go to the hospital with one doctors and also one. It's really very, very difficult. We have at the beginning of our discussion this problem with the votes and with the political opinion of diaspora. I think the diaspora is politically really a very big vacuum, because they can't vote in the state of the residence. They have to vote in the state of origin, and they have to be updated in both countries, in the state of the origin and the state of residence. And I think it's really very difficult. And because of this vacuum, and sorry, it's very difficult to vote abroad, because of this vacuum and because of this very big challenge, there is a very big chance, a potential to influence the migrants. I see here in Germany that the migrants don't make a difference between the different parties. They vote them who is very active, who organize the travel, who came here and speaks with them and said, how can we help you? It doesn't come later helps, but it's this concept. And I think that it's also the success of Erdogan, because Erdogan is in Germany very, very active. We have really a very big vacuum. I think if everybody is so active like Erdogan in abroad or in Germany, I think we will have a very different vote situation from migrants. And in the political sphere is very, very, very difficult. It's difficult in the state of origin when I'm discussing with my family about vote. for me, crazy vote and say, you can't imagine how is it here and you can't discuss with us.
Thank you very much. And now I see there is an intervention from Adem Gashi, and then we have another intervention. Yes, please go ahead, Adem.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just regarding the regional economic area in the Balkans, that the RCC, I mean, works heavily on this agenda, and it's very ambitious actually. And in the process of the Common Regional Market for 2021-2024, there have been extensive consultations, and there is also a big commitment from the countries from the economies in the region actually to deliver concrete results on different aspects that are covered through this plan. And as well as, I mean, there have been also, in the sense of the previous achievements in the sense of the digitalization and other aspects in the regional cooperation. We may mention just the roaming tariffs that have been reduced, and that is, I mean, of this kind of contribution, I mean, that has been very tangible for through these kind of actions. Then in this regard, just to mention, I mean, that we have to keep an eye on the other intervention that it's from the European Union that comes through the economic and investment plan for the Western Balkans, that it is going to be the 9 billion injection in the economies of the Western Balkans, that it is also one opportunity to look forward to and to maybe complement the local or the regional initiatives that are on this way. So just wanted to, in the sense of Ms. Mojsovska's response and contribution in this aspect.
Thank you very much. I realize it's really much easier to moderate a real life discussion because I am having now more questions and interventions. There is we have a question from or comment from Blerta Begisholi, who for a comment, please could you make yourself heard and understood? Unmute yourself, please.
Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So I had a comment in relation to your questions and about how active and easy it is for youth of the Western Balkans who have studied.
Hello? Oh, damn it. Hello?
For a long time, I was back in Kosovo, politically active. So I think I have some experience on that. And the main difference is the political parties. You have some political parties who are very much looking forward to attract young talents who have studied abroad, who have experience abroad. And you have the ones who still live with this old mindset, who are maybe as part of their discourse use this idea of attracting foreign social capital and foreign students coming back, but actually do not implement that. And if you, as a young person, try to go back, it will be a really hostile environment in a way which will not welcome you in the way you expected it. So I think it really much depends. From the Kosovo example, it depends from the political party.
Would you be willing to say which parties are more welcoming and which might only, you know, pretend to be welcoming for immigrants? You don't have to. You don't have to.
I might try to give a more general answer. I have the impression that the parties that belong to the right wing, the parties of the after the war parties, as we call them in Kosovo, are less open for foreign young force, whereas the social democratic ones are or the ones on the left are more open.
You were careful not to mention names, but I think everyone knows which parties you meant. Thank you very much
Thank you
for your intervention. Okay, so now I wrote down so much that I'm getting confused by my own handwriting. Aha, yes. Something I wanted to ask Nikola Kandić, and I'm trying to find him now here on my screen. Hi. Now, we keep hearing for years, and there's this great research by Tim Judah and others about, how in certain sectors, especially healthcare, there's more and more, there are more and more shortages. Actually, having been a hospital patient in Belgrade myself some years ago, I experienced this firsthand as well. But can you, have you in your daily life experienced, for example, let's stay in the health business, let's be concrete, in the healthcare sector. Have you experiences, or do you know firsthand accounts of people who actually run into trouble because their health system was understaffed? Be it in Sarajevo, be it, because I think there it's even more extreme, somewhere in smaller towns or even villages. Is this happening? Is this an experience that people know about? That many people experience?
Well, we have paradox in this situation. I now live in Sarajevo, but I'm from one small town at the south of country, and in that small town, at this moment, maybe we have only 30% of the necessary medical workers in a hospital. And
but you mean the town in Montenegro where you're from?
Yeah, I'm born in Montenegro. After that, I'm raised at the south of country, and now I live in Sarajevo. That's all migration, but not to the Western world, just inside Western Balkans. Well, and we have that situation, but there is one paradox. We still have the medical workers who are unemployed in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And that's something what is not easy to explain how that's happening in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And maybe I like to use that word system and systematical measures, but all these problems we have today are part of the systematical measures, and our country have different agreement with Western European countries about medical workers, especially with Germany, and not only Bosnia and Herzegovina, also Serbia and other countries in the Western Balkans. But what is a problem when you live in Sarajevo today is because in this moment the narrative about medical system is really bad. Maybe
the narrative?
Narrative about our health care system and medical system is really bad. Maybe we still have enough good medical workers in our hospitals, but the whole narrative is that everyone who is good doctor, he is now in Germany. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, we now believe that doctors which work in our hospitals are not good enough. If you are good enough, you are probably in Germany. If you are in Bosnia and Herzegovina, that means that you have fake diploma, because we have a problem with that, or that you are not good enough. And that's something what we need to change. Not only this situation that we have less medical workers in Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Western Balkan countries, but also this narrative about the quality of the people who work now in Bosnia and Herzegovina, not only in the healthcare system, but also in other systems. If you are a university professor at the Faculty of Law, for example, and you're a professor at Vienna, you are a good one. But if you are a professor at University of Skopje, like a professor at the University of Economics, you are not good enough because you are in the Western Balkans. And that's something that we need really to change.
How, I mean, this is an awful narrative, obviously, but how would you change that narrative?
Oh, well, how to change that narrative is maybe to inform the audience population about bright stories, about these stories from Gorazde, because if you live in Bosnia and Herzegovina, that doesn't mean that you know about the story of Gorazde. maybe journalists from Austria know about Gorazde, but not every person in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and that's really a problem.
To be honest, yes, I was surprised. I mean, I found Gorazde really a great story, and I thought this Nias Hastor should be a superstar in Bosnia. I mean, he's known, but not so many people have ever, you know, can imagine that you have Gorazde full of huge factories who are really competing on top world level. So yeah, true. More of those stories. I completely agree. Thank you very much. Nermin, Oruč, yes. You and Adem Gashi now have the possibility for a closing statement if you want to, because we have like 8 minutes left, so not so much. If you summarize, like on a to-do list, what should be done to change narratives, and then indirectly reality, what would top your to-do list?
Am I the first to start?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, well, if we would say try to summarize, you know, all the arguments presented, for example, about the need to increase involvement of diaspora, not necessarily through, you know, financial contribution, but also through skills transfers. If we talk about, you know, the issue of this, you know, internal political party networks and so on. And if we talk about, you know, the need for further research to understand what are the characteristics of diaspora, their needs, and so on, I would argue, I mean, if I'm allowed to, you know, give some proposals, especially for the ones where, you know, countries like Germany, you know, or other EU countries can contribute to, I would say something like, you know, a regional, you know, Western Balkans university established by EU fund that would attract people from abroad, people of, you know, Western Balkans diaspora, to get involved, you know, as research fellow, as professors, which would improve education system, obviously, in these countries, which would attract diaspora in countries that are not, where universities are not necessarily open to this. This would be, I think, you know, proposal on the top of my list. I may be a bit biased, you know, as an academic, but it seems to me, you know, when we hear all these stories, this seems like, you know, a no-brainer, I would say. Yes, you want to comment?
I like the idea. European Union funded regional Western Balkans university, seated where?
In Sarajevo, of course.
Okay. Well, no doubt on this panel with 3/5 majority for Sarajevo, that would be the result. And we stay in Sarajevo for the last question to Adem Gashi. And I would also ask you to somehow summarize your plan for tackling the Western Balkan migration crisis.
So, as I said from the beginning on, if we don't tackle this issue from the regional perspective, I mean, we are going to continue to discuss on these matters again and again. And I like very much, I mean, the idea of Nermin that was mentioning that there should be initiatives that address the part, I mean, he mentioned through education, but there could be also IPA funds that could be allocated to tackle this part of the diaspora and contribution relation with the Western Balkan economies in this regard. And what we will be doing, it's the part that even as a project that we are with a youth lab project that we work in, it's to try to make the youth to increase their participation in decision making in order for these all these conditions that exist, legal, infrastructural, market, environment, and everything, to correspond with the needs that are for those that are going to be affected by that. So in this regard, not just to be consulted about these policies, but actually to be involved in designing the solutions and everything, in order to feel the ownership in both designing the solutions, but also implementing policies related to all these conditions that are making them leave the region, but as well as to make the region a favorable environment for the diaspora to come in, and besides the old talks and all discussions, to have a much more elevated level of contribution and exchange in both sides. So this is from my side. Thanks a lot again.
Thank you very much. Mentioning IPA funds reminded me of a study. I don't know the title, but it will be easy to Google, which I found interesting. It's by the European Stability Initiative, one of the best think tanks I think we have in Europe. And they proposed a while ago as one measure, treating Western Balkan states financially, at least, as if they were already members, and making structural funds available to them instead of the IPA funds. Of course, on the notion of strict political conditionality. I found that a very interesting idea, even though, of course, there's a question of how politically realistic it is. But then again, that is nothing we can discuss today. Thank you very much. For all of you, I still find a real life conference much, much more fruitful than what we did today, but this is the best we can do right now. And at least I felt I learned a lot, and thank you for your contributions. Now I am told that I should not close the conference, but tell the co-moderator Valeska Esch, hi, that, yeah, to give over the floor to her, which I do right now. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martens, and I couldn't agree more. We would obviously have loved to host all of you here in Berlin these days. We will continue in just 1 minute with some of our experts and partners who will briefly share their key takeaways from the past 2 days, and also with concluding remarks by Ambassador Schütz. We will continue in 2 minutes, so please stay tuned until then. Thank you.